Hey guys, Eclipse14 here. Alright, first live recording for 2021 and my second time having to record my PlayStation collection because of a fatal error in the uploading process initially. So, I have 85 games for my PlayStation collection, by far my biggest, and I've got 4 discs here, 6 long boxes, and the rest are pretty much in their jewel case form. So, gonna go ahead and run through this thing rather quickly. I'm gonna cut this into 2 parts as well because I don't expect to go through all of this in a single video. So let's jump into these really quickly, starting with Spyro the Dragon, which is a very fun game that I played a lot of, which is amazing. Beat it many times at 100% completion. Crash Team Racing, only played this one a little bit without too many difficulties. I was mostly playing to test, and this was actually one of the last games I played on a PS2 that eventually died off, and I have yet to get a PS1 or 2 that works since then. Down there is the manual, which is nice to have. This one here is Rayman, which is the only greatest hits game I've got, which will eventually be traded off at some point. Hopefully I can find a black label copy of this one so everything looks in sync. The green just stands like a sore thumb. And this little sucker here is Thunder Force 5 Perfect System. This is actually a pretty awesome shoot 'em up. Unfortunately, it's also a very rare one for me to find. This is the only disc I've ever seen in the wild, and disc runs around $40 and completes are about 80 to 85, so it might be a little bit before I ever get a complete copy of Thunder Force 5, but it's a very good shoot 'em up, so if you find it, I recommend checking it out. Alright, so with those 4 discs taken care of, I've got 8 stacks of 10 games each. We'll cover the first 4 for part 1, and I'll cover the other 4 for part 2 alongside the 6 long boxes. So with that said, gonna take my time and let's get moving. Okay, stack 1. Starting off with Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. Completed this game 100%. Overall, it's a pretty good game overall. I like this foil cover that the Black Label has. Not sure if all of them have it, but it definitely is really nice to see. So, yeah, that's neat. Spyro Year of the Dragon. This one I've completed at, I think, 120 is where it ends, because it definitely goes over 100% by a good margin because of all sorts of stuff. Overall, not a bad game. Definitely enjoy this one over the other 2 Spyro games on PlayStation. Crash Bandicoot. This is a hard game. Considerably hard compared to the rest of the series. But I did manage to 100% this at one point in time. Overall, nice looking copy. The manual is rougher than it looks, though. The brackets, not brackets, the staples, have ripped through the top cover, so it's very difficult to get the manual out as a result. Overall, it does look pretty good, though, so I'm glad for that. Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back with its lenticular cover. Completed this 100%. Liked this one over the first one and the third one. So, there's that. Speaking of the third one, Crash Bandicoot Warped, also with its lenticular cover. This one I've completed at 105%. Not too shabby overall, and a very good game. Rallycross 2. This cover is actually busted, so yep, told you. This is actually a very cheap racing game. It's a nice racing game overall. It's something I play on occasion, but not a whole lot to say otherwise. Oof. I really need to get this cover replaced though, because it's just terrible. Bomberman Party Edition. This one runs in a 2D style. It can go up to 5 players, which is kind of unusual, but it's what can be done. The normal game is basically just it's a remake of the original 1985 Bomberman that everybody probably knows on the NES. So that's really all this is. Not too much to say otherwise. Lemmings and Oh No More Lemmings. This game is based off the PC game from '92, and Oh No More Lemmings was actually a recent, at the time, PC release that was a much more difficult version of the original Lemmings. So you got both of them in the same disc, and overall, it's not a bad game. Fear Effect. This is the first multi-jewel case, multi-disc jewel case I've got here. Couldn't play this one a whole lot, unfortunately. I've heard it's actually a really good game. There's disc 1. Inside is the manual, as well as disc 2. Flip this around here, and we got ourselves disc 3 and 4. Not too shabby overall. I really should try this game out, though, when I have the chance. And finally, Oddworld Abe's Exodus. This one, haven't played much either, mostly because I was hoping for Abe's Odyssey, and I never got to get that. there's disc 1, there's the manual. Inside is a bunch of, this thing, speaking stuff and all that for some stuff. And flip this on the other side, and we got ourselves disc 2. If I open that, there we are. Not too much to comment on this one, because I was hoping for Abe's Odyssey, and I've never picked it up, so this has just been sitting in the collection as a result. Alright, and that's the first stack. Stack 2. Ape Escape. I didn't play this game all that much, like 10 minutes to make sure it worked, but I am familiar with the name and the fact that this game was, at the time, DualShock controllers were pretty recent, so this game utilized that by using most of its controls using the analog sticks. So that was pretty neat to see and experience, but never really got around to fully playing on it. But I do have the game when I have the chance. I am familiar with the series, and I'm actually kind of willing to give it a shot, just never got around to doing so. Dynasty Warriors. This is a 2D fighter in a 3D background, pretty much in the form of, like, Soul Calibur, or in this case, it'd be Soul Blade at this point. Definitely a bit different from current Dynasty Warriors games, that is for certain, in that it is a fighting game, straight-up fighting game, rather than what it is these days. Pretty short game overall, but it is nice. It's nice to see just the roots of the series overall. Jekio Shooting King. Don't have too much to say about this one, other than it is a vertical shooter. Put in like 10 minutes, and that was about it. For a long time, this was about $15 to $20. Now it's shot up into about the 40s over the last couple of months. So if you can find it, I'd probably pick it up before it gets even worse than that. Xevious 3D/G+. This is it's got several ports of Xevious. It's got the original one, it's got Super Xevious, Xevious 3D, and I think there's one more, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Played them for a little bit to make sure everything was working. Much like Jekio, this game is now into the 40s. Definitely not a very common game to find either, so if you can find it, I recommend checking it out, especially if you like the original Xevious. Beyond the Beyond. This game is actually garbage. It is my first multi-jewel case that's featuring only one disc because the manual is too fat for a normal jewel case. So just flip that here, and there is the disc. Again, this game is freaking... It's bad. It really is just absolutely god-awful. I can't believe I own this sucker. Heart of Darkness. This game is actually not bad for what it is. It's got a nice little art style for a platformer. Problem is the game is actually very, very short, despite it being 2 discs. There's the first disc. Inside the manual, under the manual in my case actually, is the 3D glasses, which is actually pretty uncommon to see for this game. And flip this around, and there is the second disc. So I've beaten this game. It's actually not a bad game. My only problem is the game is very short. For 2 discs, that's just inexcusable. Metal Gear Solid. I don't think I have to comment on this one, because a lot of people should know what this is. 2 discs overall with the manual. I haven't actually touched this version of the game at all compared to the GameCube version, and the reason for that is because the copy I've owned is very, very clean, as in no fingerprints on the discs at all on the bottom, so I've been very, very nervous even touching it. So, never really played it, used the GameCube version to play it due to its condition. This is one of those cases where the game may as well have been sealed, and stayed sealed. That's the reasoning. Galarians. This is actually a really good psychic horror game. Definitely played it, completed it. It's one of only 2 copies of anything in my collection that's 3 discs. Disc 1, got the manual, and flip this around for disc 2 and 3. My main complaint with this one is that, much like Heart of Darkness, it's very, very short. Literally, these 2 discs compose of a single stage, and the first disc consists of 2 stages. That's horrifically short for a game that could have had so much potential. Not a bad game, though. Speaking of Soul Blade, I got the Black Label copy of that. Kind of short because it is a fighting game with a decent campaign, I'd say. But again, fighting games are meant to be short, I guess. But it's a good game overall. Definitely a good start to the eventual Soul Calibur series. And this is worth playing if you want to see the series' roots. And then we got Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, which is just... the idea of this is so weird. It is a puzzle game where you've got a bunch of jewels. You try to break them, and you end up attacking your characters. So it's an oddity in its own right, but apparently a lot of people liked it back then. So it got a port on the Saturn and eventually got one on Game Boy Advance as well. PlayStation 1 is pretty good though, so if you can find it, it's probably worth checking out. Alright, that is the second stack. Stack number 3. Mega Man 8. Don't think I need to explain the Mega Man series very much at all. Didn't play this one a huge amount. I think I fought like 2 Robot Masters, and that was about it in terms of as far as I went. Um, Definitely have been stalling on it for a while, mostly because of chronology reasons. I beat the first and second ones on NES, still trying to get the third one, as well as some of the others, but that's going to be kind of a pain in the neck for some of the ones I'm missing. But eventually I will start playing 8. There's also an Anniversary Collector's Edition, in case this is Anniversary Edition. But I have yet to find that on PlayStation, and the Sega Saturn one is batshit insane in terms of price. So if I can find one on PlayStation, that'd be pretty awesome. Mega Man X4. This one I've already completed. Pretty decent game overall. The fact that I played X5 before X4 made things a little bit annoying, the fact that you couldn't even duck, so things felt a little weird in that regard, but overall I got through it. Game's alright, and not too much to say otherwise. Speaking of X5, here's my copy of X5. This one I have completed as well. The whole time-based mission thing is pretty weird. Not too much else to say otherwise, because it's been many, many years since I even touched this one, put it in the console, since I beat it. Again, not a huge amount to say otherwise. Mega Man X6. This one here, I only played like halfway and never finished it. I was actually getting pretty close and got stuck into somewhere else in terms of playing a game, and I just never went back. So maybe someday I'll actually play through this madness and see what can be done. Mega Man Legends. This one, didn't really play this one a huge amount. I know I played it on I played Mega Man 64, which is Legends, just on Nintendo 64. But even that wasn't by very long. I think I went through like the first little area, and that was about it, just to make sure it worked. Definitely wanted to get into this. I just never had the time to pull it off. Street Fighter EX2 Plus. This is the first really pricey game in my collection that I'm showing, since Capcom fighting games have been going berserk on PlayStation in recent years. This one, the disc is running about $40 and completes are about 80 to 85, so I'm glad I picked this up when I did, back when completes were about 50. And overall, plays okay. Not too much to comment on otherwise, because fighting games and shortness just don't really seem to fit well with me. It's just, if it's short, I don't really remember too much. Darkstalkers 3. This is actually a pretty good game. This one's manual is a bit rough. The back is ripped out. But overall, I'm glad I picked this up, because it is a neat game. I wish there would be another Darkstalkers game, but other than that, I'm just fine with this as is for right now. I'm still looking for the first one on PlayStation, as well as the second one that was on Sega Saturn, but those are going to be pretty pricey, especially with Darkstalkers 3 going very pricey as well. I've seen completes go as high as $70. This would probably fit in like 55, 60 just due to the back being ripped. But overall, I'm glad I picked it up before things got stupid. Speaking of stupid, Rival Schools. This one, it's very difficult to find one complete with both discs in the manual. It's usually either missing the manual or one of the discs. And I've got both of them. Being a fighting game, I beat this one. I got through this one pretty quickly. Not a whole lot to comment on otherwise. I've seen completes running about $90, sometimes $100. So if you can find this one, hopefully you can get it cheap, because this one is not a common game to find at all. The Legend of Dragoon. I've wanted to play this one for so long, and I never really had the chance to do it. I got stuck at some point in Disc 1 and just never went back. And that was on a Greatest Hits copy, too. I've never even touched this Black Label version. This got a manual, a little bit ripped. Disc 2 is down there. Flip this around, we got ourselves Disc 3 and 4. Overall, looks pretty decent. I really wish I could play this game again. Maybe when I finally get my PlayStation or PlayStation 2 working, I will be able to have this as one of the top priorities. And Legend of Legaia, this one is even bigger, because this copy doesn't want to work last time I checked. It's a single disc. I have this, and on top of that, I also have the disc, which is in terrible condition. Not too much to comment on otherwise, because the sucker just won't work. Ay, ay, ay. Alright, that is stack 3. Stack 4. Final Fantasy Origins. This concludes WonderSwan Color styled versions of Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy 2. I only played this one for about 30 minutes, 15 on both of them to make sure they worked. The reason for that was because this was actually the last console version of Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy 2 that I needed to pick up, and I had already beaten them a bunch on Game Boy Advance and owned the PSP versions, so all I needed was the PlayStation version, and I owned all the North American copies of the first 2 games. So that was really the whole point of picking up Origins in the first place. Final Fantasy Chronicles. This includes Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger, which are very fantastic games in their own right. There's Final Fantasy IV, there is the manual, and in the back is Chrono Trigger. If I can just lift that, there we go. Yeah, not too shabby. Only played them for a little bit, though, because I had already played Final Fantasy IV a good chunk, and I had beaten Chrono Trigger through the DS port, and never really touched this one as a result. Same thing went with the Super Nintendo version, if you saw that video. Final Fantasy Anthology. In the US, it composes of Final Fantasy 5 and 6. In Europe, it's 4 and 5. 6 got its own individual release, and in Japan, every one of them pretty much got their own separate release, which is pretty unusual. Now, this one is complete with 5 and 6, as well as an unusual disc back there, which some Black Label copies have. And that is a soundtrack disc from Final Fantasy 5 and 6. And if you notice, it's not the standard PlayStation style. It is actually a standard soundtrack disc, which is pretty neat to see. And, of course, you got your Final Fantasy 6 disc right here. I actually beat Final Fantasy 5 and 6 for the first time through this particular version of the game. So, pretty good experiences overall, and definitely enjoyable ones. Final Fantasy 7, don't think I need to explain this game pretty much at all. It's the only other game I have that's 3 discs. The other one was the aforementioned Galarians earlier in the video. Disc 1, the manual is pretty decent looking, and in the back is disc 2 and 3. No, this is not the misprint copy, unfortunately. Masterpiece is correct, even though this is Black Label. Have seen the misprint version quite a few times, I just never ever picked it up. That's pretty much all I got to say about it. Final Fantasy VIII. This one is complete Black Label as well. Disc 1, got the manual. Pick up Disc 2 back there, which looks pretty good. Flip it around, we got ourselves the Brady Games mini walkthrough, as well as Disc 3, and finally Disc 4. Speaking of mini walkthroughs, I'm a complete idiot. Before I even recorded this, I had 6 guides I had to show from some of the games I picked up, so I'll show them at the end of this stack, and that'll conclude this video. Anyway, Final Fantasy IX, I actually completed this game through the Greatest Hits version. I picked this one up later, and never really played it because I just finished the game. Not that it matters, because this version actually is in kind of rough shape anyway. There's Disc 1 and 2 with the manual. Flip this around, we got the Play Online strategy guide thing, as well as Disc 3 and Disc 4. So, pretty good looking thing overall. Excellent game. Definitely my favorite out of the PlayStation main entries. Final Fantasy Tactics. Beat this one quite a few times, and still enjoy this game every time I play it. Not a whole lot to comment on it at this point, because it had been, like, I think 3 years since I last played this game, and I just remember steamrolling it and not much else to comment otherwise. Chocobo's Dungeon 2. Don't have too much to comment on this one. Only played like 15 minutes or something like that to make sure everything was fine. Well, this was one of my more recent PlayStation pickups. Got this back in 2018. I've only picked up like 6 since that year, so not a whole lot to comment on this one, unfortunately, because I never really got to play it too much. Saga Frontier 2. I had been sitting on this game for a really long time because I wanted to get the first Saga Frontier, but I've always been pushing it back. I do need to pick it up this year, though, before it gets absurd, because I've been seeing it on the rise lately. I've heard this game is also exceptionally difficult, so I'm going to have a lot of fun trying to get through this game. But overall, when I get the first game, I'll be able to play that one, and then eventually play this one. So this one's on hold for a while until I get the first game. And to end this first part is Xenogears. An excellent game in its own right, but is also one of only 2 jewel case copies of any of my PlayStation games that's not complete. This one is missing the manual due to an order error that was pretty much on their own part, not mine, because I specifically said which particular copy to pick up, and I ended up getting one without the manual and ended up paying $10 more. Granted that it who I made order this, I had actually he had done much better with a lot of my other pickups. This one was the only error that he made, so I promptly reminded him of that, and it's been fixed ever since. So overall, I've beaten this game. It's an excellent story. I just need to find a manual for this sucker, and I'll be good to go. Alright, let's get those 6 strategy guides out of the way, and that'll conclude this video. And here they are in the order they showed up. First off is Metal Gear Solid Unauthorized Game Secrets. It's the only guide I own that says Game Secrets instead of Strategy Guide for some reason, even though it actually runs like an actual strategy guide, so why that's the case I have no idea. It looks a bit rough on the front, looks a little rough overall, but overall it's not bad looking, and I'm just glad I picked it up. Legend of the Gaia. This one's a little rough on the front. This side is just a little bit torn for whatever reason. It's not completely ripped or anything, but it's an okay looking guide. I was looking forward to using this when I was actually going to play the game, but since my disc doesn't work, I'll have to look for a new copy, and when I do, I will definitely be using this guide to actually play the game, because I've been anticipating this for a while and would like to use this to help me get through it. Final Fantasy Chronicles. I actually got this guide before I even picked up my game, because it was gifted to me. It is a reversible guide with Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger. Never really used it, read through it a little bit, just to see what it was like. Looks pretty good overall, but again, never really used it since I'd already beaten both games. So, what's the point of needing a guide if you already beat the game? But, hey, at least it's there with my game. Final Fantasy Anthology. This one is actually in very good condition. The spine's pretty much immaculate, and the guide looks very nice overall. Never really used it myself because I had beaten both games before I picked up this guide, but it's nice to have the guide with the game because it makes it worth it, I'd say. Final Fantasy VIII. Use this one pretty much at the end in order to finish the game, and this one's actually the only guide in my whole collection of guides that owns the extras. It's got the special tattoos that are supposed to be in the back, which there they are. Looks pretty good overall, and got the instructions and everything, which I'm not even going to take out. And yeah, overall it looks pretty decent. Top's got a little wear to it, but hey, if it's got the stickers and everything, that's pretty nice, considering it's the only thing with extras. And last is Primus Final Fantasy Tactics Guide. Didn't really use this one all that much at all, considering I'd already beaten the game several times before I picked this one up. Guide overall looks pretty nice, except the very bottom of the spine's a little bit rough, but overall looks pretty good, and not too much to comment on about that otherwise. Alright, and that is part 1 of my PlayStation collection. So, I got like 40 more games to cover. I'm going to get to work on them and upload them when I get the chance. So, hope you guys will stick around for part 2, and until then, thank you all for watching. I'll see you on the next video.